Hello everyone, and welcome to This Nintendo Life episode 138. My name is NBZ, and Nintendo found a new president, but I was going to fill out my resume to see if I could get the position. I think that's how it works, right? You submit your CV to be the president of Nintendo. I hope that you're going to be working on yours, Bally, because, got another 15 years or so to prepare, probably, but the time is coming now.
Well, my surname isn't a Nintendo boss.
Yeah, so here's the thing. This is the secret, Bally. The secret is that we need to legally change our names. I need to become... my second name needs to become Ganondorf. That's the ruling. That's what needs to happen. Who are you going to choose as for your surname?
My surname could be Black Bull.
Black? Jesus.
There we go.
Is that a double-barreled surname?
Yeah, Black Bull.
Okay,
That's
great.
me.
Hyphenated?
Yep.
Perfect. Exactly. I thought you were going to go down the route of King K. Rool or something like that.
King K. Rool, yeah, that's a good. I wanted to go a bit more niche.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Be even nicher than King K. Rool, who's already kind of a niche villain.
Bally Black Bull.
Yeah, but oh, there you go. There's the alliteration. Oh my goodness.
The
triple B. Triple threat.
I'll walk into the job.
Easy. No sweat. Fantastic. So Bally, you're the other person who talks on this podcast about video games. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm a bit spaced out from the amount of Apex I've been playing the last couple of days.
We played last night together, did some Apex Legends last night, and I needed to go to bed because I work on Saturday. And then you're like, no, I'll just play a bit more. And then I get back today, and you're like, oh, I played 10 more hours of Apex since last we talked. And I'm like, Jesus, Bally, this is a crushing addiction that you have. But the game is fucking good, so And
in that time, I probably had a fairly depressing number of kills, but I am racking up more damage and I'm getting better with a wider range of guns, so it's
improving.
I'm trying to crack it before the end of the year. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got to get that win together. That's our goal for 2019. Fantastic. All right, well, we're going to talk a lot about video games on this show, but we're going to talk about all the different things around them and some different segments that we can structure it. So, Bally, do you want to give us those segments that we're going to be talking today?
For our first segment, we're going to be talking about the games that we have been playing. Our second segment, we've got a couple of your emails. Thanks for sending those in. And then our third segment is a bit of a news roundup. There's rumors floating around. Reggie's quit Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
We got new information on Pokemon Sword and Shield that's going to be based on the UK, which is just weird and cool.
It's pretty great, yeah.
That's nice. So, we're going to run through a few of those stories.
Well, let's kick things off then, Bally, with the video games we've been playing. What have you been digging into that isn't Apex Legends endlessly for hours on end?
I have been playing a lot of Apex Legends, but I'm not going to bore you with that because that's going to keep on being a thing throughout the year.
Yeah, exactly.
So I finished up Wargroove, which I think came out almost exactly a month ago.
Yeah, it did, pretty much.
That game just ended up being almost exactly what I wanted from it. I think a lot of people have been moaning about the difficulty and things like that. And I think, to be honest, a lot of people just haven't played Advance Wars anytime recently.
This is Bally just dropping his sass here, that he's the master of Advance Wars. I don't know, it's kind of similar in a way to how I feel about Challenge when it comes to Fire Emblem. Like, I relished Conquest so much because it was so rigorous. Like, the strategy you had to deploy, the amount of times I had to retry maps because it was so overwhelming and difficult. And I loved that part of it. And I don't know if you feel the same way about that with Wargroove, because the thing that I've heard from a lot of people is that it feels almost unfair sometimes in terms of the difficulty and the spikes that happen.
I think Fire Emblem is far more unfair in the number of games that I've played compared to this, to be honest.
And maybe it's just like because we both grew up on these two different sides, like we're both more attuned to the difficulty levels of these types of games. Like when I got to the final level of Advance Wars, as we've talked about before, I had a bit of a meltdown because it was so incredibly difficult. It took me like 6 hours to finish properly because it was so challenging. And it's just I think the way that you think about these maps is different, right? Because in Advance Wars, I remember like that last final area, because there's so many flying units that can kind of go anywhere they want to, there's no way to like blockade things. Whereas in Fire Emblem, I'm very used to blockading, like locking units away behind a wall of other units and having them safe because of that. And because Advance Wars was more open in that sense, and I focused less on like building stuff, that it was more challenging for me in that way. Maybe it's just the way that I came to it and the way I played it. Maybe that's similar to how people are approaching Wargroove, because Advance Wars has been gone for such a long time, and so people have adapted to the Fire Emblem series more because it should be more present around the strategy genre.
And that synergy between ground, flight, and sea is kind of why I love Advance Wars so much and why I love Wargroove so much. I think it does that so well in some of the later maps. Just, you can choose to neglect land and then focus on air and sea, and then you can move units over to like help your land units. So without developing your land units, you can still get by, and vice versa. You can get some crazy anti-air units on the land and go for that. Like, there's so many strategies in the way that those units synergize. It does feel a little bit different to the way that units synergize in a game like Fire Emblem. And I think the Wargroove just absolutely nails that. And what makes it so much fun, I found, was the design of some of the units. Like the turtles are sort of your submarine replacement, I guess, compared to Advance Wars.
Oh, that's good. I like that. That's very cool.
And obviously the four factions are the Cherry Stone Army, which are, you know, your red traditional fantasy units. You got the Undead Blue Army, and of course their turtles are like skeletons. And then you've got like the yellow desert kind of faction, and they all have like mechanical beasts. So they've got like these mechanical turtles, and they've got mechanical giants. And so like the way that giants replace meta tanks, and like knights replace tanks, and like the witches replaced,
and it seems they have a really good visual diversity to it. They don't just palette swap them like other games would. They literally create a brand new sprite, and it's just like a completely new type of unit, even though it's like performing the same function as it were.
It's really cool. And that combined with each faction has like 3 or 4 commanders, and they have specific powers that I think are really cool and just diverse. And the music is just this incredible fantasy score, which I think is just so fitting. And in terms of like a visual and musical design perspective, I think this game far surpasses Advance Wars personally. As much as I love that cute kind of machine metally rocky thing that Advance Wars goes for, I think that Wargroove just kind of usurps it entirely in terms of like that setting, the fantasy setting it goes for. And stuff like the dragons look incredible, and like so they are essentially like bombers, and when a dragon just like takes out a unit and just scorches the ground, it looks so good, and the sound design and stuff like that just feels incredible, to the point where I wasn't, because you can like kind of skip the battle animations by holding down a button. I was tending not to do that on like a select few units, so I just really enjoyed the satisfying, like a critical in Fire Emblem, you know? It's
absolutely.
Like that satisfying, nailed it, and you're like, oh, beautiful.
I've never understood people who play Fire Emblem with the animations turned off. It's like the best part of the game for me. It's the reward. It's the satisfaction of, okay, I've made the tactical move, now let me watch it play out and enjoy the kind of spectacle of it almost. And I was similar to that way in Advance Wars, of watching it and just enjoying that stuff, because I think there's so much work that gets put into the animation and stuff like that, like a dragon just like scorching the plains. That seems like a fucking great thing to watch all the time.
Yeah, it's just a really impeccable presentation kind of to a level that I didn't think it would get to. And I've only been focusing on the campaign, really. I know I've done some puzzle mode, and there's a whole arcade mode, which is essentially...
So what is puzzle mode? What makes that different?
So I've only done a few of them, and they're really cool. But you're essentially given a single turn, and you have to win the game in a single turn. So
wow, that's great.
So normally it is, you have to take out their CEO. So there's always 2 ways to win in Wargroove. You either take over their headquarters, or you defeat their CEO, as in like the unit on the map.
And is that objective the same objective throughout each map? Because I've heard that like it's quite varied in terms of what you do on each map and the layout and stuff like that. But could you just realistically kill the CEO every time and win by that condition?
More or less, yes, but like the campaign forces you into other win conditions. So like there's some maps where there just isn't a CO. It's about getting your CO from point A to B, or protecting some villagers. You know, that good old Fire Emblem.
Yes,
and it's stuff like that where there are a few nods to Fire Emblem. I actually think, and without giving it away, I think the final mission is purposefully a huge nod to Fire Emblem. And I don't really want to say what it is, because I think it's a really neat thing that the game does that I mentioned to you off mic.
I remember.
I just think it felt for me, it was quite jarring at first because it's just so different to the rest of the game. But then I can kind of see why they did it, and it was kind of a nice victory lap. Like we've said on the podcast before, where games just kind of have like a slightly easier finish that's kind of nice to enjoy. So that was cool, and I just think that. Back to puzzle mode, sorry. So
yeah, exactly. You just got off tangent there.
Got off tangent because I just love this game so much. But you essentially have to win the game in a single turn, and there's only one specific way of doing it. So normally it forces you to emphasize the critical hits of each unit. So each unit has a critical hit that's dependent on
it's like positioning, right? Exactly. I think you talked about last time where like if lancemen are standing next to each other, they get a crit and stuff like that.
Exactly. So dragons critical when you're attacking units on a road, and
and
like ships critical hit long range when they're on a beach and stuff like this. So
I imagine you have to think about this stuff a lot when you're positioning in the main campaign of like if the enemies have dragons, keep your units off the road and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a real bonus to just properly get on top of your opponent. Essentially, you don't always have to critical hit, obviously, and often it's just not possible to. But it's a real nice move that this game goes for. So like that's why if you're looking from a strict kind of tick box reviewing perspective, yes, the campaign is fantastic and I really enjoyed it. But you know how games always have to have other modes and things to get better review scores, and I think that if that's what this game was going for, it's done an absolutely incredible job, because you have the puzzle mode, which I've just described, like that's winning in a single turn. You've got a whole arcade mode with each character who has like 5 or 6 specific maps that they have to do, and I think those are story driven as well, so it's like a whole separate. You have all the side missions in the campaign that I only did about half of because I was kind of just plowing on to the end, and then you've got the online mode where you can play there's a mode where it's like playing by post, so like you can play a turn, wait for someone else to do their turn.
Yeah, it's like chess through letters or whatever.
Chess through letters or whatever, and once you put all that together, I've not even tried the online mode yet. It's just a ridiculous package, and I think it's like a 12-16 quid game.
I thought you had said that you tried it with Alex at some point.
No, we were going to, and then Apex came and swallowed us from the ground.
True. Yeah.
So I do want to try that with Alex sometime in the next little while. But it's a step up from Advance Wars for me, and that was something I was surprised that this game ended up doing. I thought it was going to...
I mean, you know, the Switch has been this era of like indie studios one-upping those types of games. Like I think Golf Story is way better. I haven't played the Mario RPG on GBA or Game Boy Color, but I think Golf Story does that better. I think that Stardew surpasses Harvest Moon, and you know, if Wargroove's doing the same for Advance Wars, there you go. It's all about like taking those design lessons from those games that we loved and just refining them even down to the perfection. It's
really cool. It's just such a nice setting, and was just such a pleasant world and game to play, and I had an absolute great time. It was a great game to open the year with as like a game to come out in 2019. So
absolutely,
I totally recommend it.
And obviously they have all that like campaign editor and stuff, so people can make full-on campaigns. I'm sure someone's already made the full Advance Wars original campaign in there or something.
Yeah.
It seems like it's rich with stuff to do if you really like it. So
it's crazy. It is crazy the amount in that game. And as I said, I've only scratched the surface essentially with just not mainlining, but playing most of the campaign. And it's just... what a package. I'd highly recommend checking it out later in the year, MBZ, if you have a free space.
Yeah,
but I do warn you, it's difficult. And you can turn down the difficulty. Like, I didn't want to, and that's a thing that I guess Advance Wars, I don't think you can do very easily. So, yeah, that's a perfect... you can just do it, like, on the fly at any moment, I believe, which is really useful if you just want to get through that campaign, because it's a cool campaign. It's diverse, and it's a lot to do.
You know, like I'm the kind of person when it came to Celeste who is like, you know, I love these accessibility things. I love they're there. I'm not going to use them. I love Celeste as it is. I want to play that game.
Yeah.
With Wargroove, I feel like I would be one of the people who's like, nah, this isn't really like, I'm not very good at this. I will take those concessions if they're there for me, which is nice. I just appreciate in this day and age how accessible developers make their games, make it so easy for people to jump in, even if they have, you know, difficulty with the genre and stuff like that. It's very cool. Great
game.
Yeah, you've been playing that. And then obviously when the Nintendo Direct happened when we talked about it last episode, it kind of just happened, and so we hadn't really had a chance to talk about some of the stuff that came from it. But they dropped some demos. They dropped Daemon X Machina, and they dropped Yoshi, and they also dropped Tetris 99, which I've only played like one game of Tetris 99. Had you had a chance to play any of it at all or try it out?
Yeah, I played it. I came 13th in my first ever game.
Jesus, Valley, what are you doing?
I think it was because I played it like the day after it come out, so there were a lot of people on who were probably as good at Tetris as me, which is
terrible. Yeah, same here. I suck at Tetris.
And then I kind of burned out on it hard to the point where I was like, do I really want to pick up Tetris Effect at some point? Like, this is... I'm not that into Tetris. I don't know. It's okay.
Yeah, it is weird. Tetris seems to be one of those games that the wider kind of gaming media, everyone on Twitter loves Tetris, and everyone also seems to be really fucking good at Tetris. I like Tetris. I think it's a cool game. I also have no idea how to strategize or play it whatsoever. So it's very difficult for me. I always find myself being like, I mean, it looks like this should fit here and then that should fit there, but then I end up with a bunch of gaps everywhere and I don't really know what I'm doing. And yeah, the best I've come is 30th, I think. And yeah, man, I don't know. It's a very cool idea, and I think this is such a smart thing Nintendo have done and added it to their system. And I want to play more and maybe get better at Tetris, but I don't know how to get better at Tetris, you know? Like, it's one of those things I think you really have to practice at it. And for me, if someone who wants to get better at Tetris, I don't think this is a good avenue to do that, because it's a competitive game wherein people are constantly attacking you and throwing you off your rhythm. So if you have a good thing going and you're building it up, and you're like, okay, I understand this now, you can just get knocked down like a 10-pin kind of bowling. Yeah. It's just like struck out because people are way, way good.
I think I'd like to get good at Tetris as well, but I don't think that game is Tetris 99. And I'll do it probably with Tetris Effect at a later date when it's on sale or something, because I love me my VR.
Exactly. And if I'm going to play a Tetris game, man, I'm so bummed out because they used to sell Game Boy Tetris on the 3DS eShop, and then Ubisoft got the rights, and then they had to take down Game Boy Tetris from the 3DS eShop, and I never bought it, and that was a bad idea because Game Boy Tetris is the best Tetris. I don't think it's ever been surpassed because it's just so goddamn good. I remember playing it, like borrowing it from someone when I was younger and playing it for a little bit and being like, this is cool. Obviously no idea what I was doing, but still. Anyway, mild tangent. I just am annoyed that I never bought Game Boy Tetris. I will never be able to learn how to be good at Tetris. So, they also, obviously, as I said, dropped the Daemon X Machina demo, which I played through. Did you check that out at all, Bally?
I did not.
Yeah. I would say don't bother. Honestly, I was pretty underwhelmed by it. I thought it was kind of very sluggish. Like, it looks very cool in trailers, but the feel of it was not great. Very hard to read. The UI is pretty cluttered, not very clear in terms of tutorializing. Feels very, I don't know, it feels quite undercooked at the moment, and it's a neat idea. It's a cool thing seeing another mech game out there, but from what I've played, it just did not win me over at all, and kind of has solidified that I'm not interested in playing that game. So, hey, demos can be worth that as well sometimes, you know. If they're not going to sell you on a game, they're going to sell you away from a game. So that's what that did for me. And then the Yoshi's Crafted World demo came out as well, which is a game that is pretty much Nintendo's biggest hitter up until Mario Maker in June, because there's nothing really else coming out. And it's coming out end of the month, and I don't know how you felt about this, Bally, but I like Woolly World quite a bit. I think Woolly World is definitely a successor to Yoshi's Island. And this game doesn't really feel like that at all. You don't have the traditional egg throw of, like, goes up and down, up and down, up and down, like pick your spot and shoot. It's much more targeted because you can target enemies in the foreground and the background, and so they can't have it as a scrolling thing because there's 3 dimensions to it now. Like, you can throw your egg all over the place, and so you kind of have this reticle that zooms in and out, and depending on the context of, like, where it is situated, it will throw it at an object in the foreground or the background or straight ahead of you. And a lot of people have been saying this, but it feels a lot like Yoshi's Story, which is a game from the N64 that I've never played, but back when I was watching every Let's Play Nintendo Capri Sun put out, he played through Yoshi's Story. I really question my choices because, like, I love Nintendo Capri Sun. He's he's one of the greatest YouTubers of all time. He's one of my favorite people who has ever made content on the internet. And back then, I would watch literally everything he did. So it led me to watching 100 and whatever part playthrough of Donkey Kong 64, which, dear God, no one do that, because that game is a garbage truck on fire and it's a nightmare. But it was fun watching him play through, because he's great and he has great commentary, and I enjoy, his voice and everything. So I watched him play through Yoshi's Story, and that game fucking sucks. Like it's like this linear, very weird pseudo 2D game that came out on N64 that's all about collecting the fruit in a level, and you have to get like 30 fruit and then the level finishes. Like there's no end point, the levels just like loop on themselves. And this felt more similar to that, because quite honestly the platforming is nothing. There's not really any platforming here. A lot of it is just hitting things to fall down. Like there was one moment where you hit a bridge and it kind of collapses. And it is the first level, I'll give you that, but it is so railroaded. It is so fixed. Like the path that Yoshi is on is so static, and obviously that's the case in any 2D game, but there's something about this that makes it feel even more linear than those other games. And I don't quite know why. It might be just the aesthetic and the way it's laid out that it kind of has that feel to it, but it didn't strike me as something that I was particularly engaged with from a gameplay standpoint. Now, it's gorgeous. I think it has a fantastic aesthetic, and I think it really builds on what Yoshi's Woolly World started, and obviously Good Feel, they just have a knack for making really great looking games, like starting with Wario Land Shake It, which is a staggeringly good looking game. I wish they'd remake it in 3D because it's amazing. All the way to Kirby and Yoshi, and now Yoshi again. That is really where their talent lies most of all, is in the aesthetic and in making it a world that is so much fun to interact with, because like everything you hit has a little kind of spark to it that makes it feel like a real papercraft thing that exists in that world. But I think the thing that concerns me most about this game is the fact that once you've played through the level, it says, okay, we're going to play through it again, this time backwards, which we already knew about. We knew that was a thing. And this time you have to find all the 5 hidden pups. I can't remember what he's called. It's like the dog that Yoshi... Poochie? I think he's called Poochie.
Yes.
So you've got to find a bunch of Poochies in the level. So that's your secondary objective, is go find the Poochies. Like, okay, fine. Like, going back through the level is really not that much interesting. Like, it's cool seeing the backside of it, because they've really taken the time. There's really little details, like Kellogg's boxes and stuff. Not obviously Kellogg's, like, it's not branded, cereal but it's boxes, like cereal boxes, cornflakes and things like that are... you can see the insides of the boxes and the ingredients labels down in the background and stuff like that. And you can see the Shy Guys behind, like, holding things up and, like, paper mache type things. And that's neat, but it doesn't really add anything to playing the game. Like, it's very cool visually, but I don't think it really does anything for me as a player when I'm going through this level again for no reason for the second time. And then what it does again is it tries to squeeze even more juice out of this already uninspired level by saying, okay, here, I've got a fetch quest for you. Let's throw some MMO style fetch quest into this 2D Yoshi game. This flower thing he speaks to you and says, okay, go through the level again, but this time you got to find 5 cows. And so you have to go through the same level again, and you have to find 5 cows in the background, which, whatever, it's kind of like a Where's Wally thing. Find the thing that's hidden. They're not really hidden though, so it doesn't really have that much. And again, this is the first level, so I'm sure that these objectives will become more interesting with more kind of challenging things later on. But it was, once more, just doing the same level. I'm just going to hit these cows in the background, and then the level's over. And the thing that worries me the most about this is because, like, if it was just, hey, you can just play through all the levels, don't worry about the backside thing, don't worry about the side quest stuff, that's just like extras if people want to do them. The thing that worried me the most is that the NPC who talks to you about this is like, oh great, you got all these flowers. Hey, by the way, do you know that flowers can unlock more levels? Did you know that? And instantly my least favourite thing in video games rears its head, which is find collectibles to unlock levels. I think we both strongly dislike this as a mechanic, as a thing. If you're going to make your game, make it so that I can just play through it without having to get the extraneous nonsense in order to finish the game. I just want to play through the main levels. I don't want to collect stuff in order to even have the ability to play through the main levels. And hopefully, what that means is it will unlock some side stuff and it won't be the main stuff that you're unlocking. But I'm worried because it seems like this game may be quite short. It may be leveraging and padding itself out on this idea of replaying these levels backwards and then doing random ass fetch quests to fill it out. I don't know. That's my feeling on it so far. Again, only the first level. It's going to be basic because it's a Yoshi game and it's the first level. But from the structure that they have shown in the demo, does not fill me with a great deal of confidence. So, have you played through it at all, Bally? Did you give it a go?
Yes, I gave it a go, and like Woolly World was a good game. I was overly harsh on that game. It is a good game. But it was entertaining. It was fun. But this is just, it felt more like a process than actually. I didn't feel like I was having much fun. Like it was very nice to look at. I think that the world of cardboard looks fantastic and really, pushes the switch on like what you would hope like Nintendo art style could do. But as you say, like collecting like cows, and it's just like, what is this? And if you want a game where running back through the level is fun, it's the Wario Land series. Like that's how you do it.
Goodfield already did this, and they did it better.
Exactly.
Which is crazy.
But it's just, Yoshi's just getting dumbed down and probably appealing to an audience that isn't me and you necessarily. And I thought that was the job of Kirby, and it's a shame that Yoshi's joining that crew.
Yeah, that was the direction Goodfield went in after Wario Land. Was they had Kirby's Epic Yarn, which is a delightful game, but obviously bears no challenge whatsoever. It's just kind of a fun co-op thing to go through. And I imagine this is the same thing. It's got co-op in it. People will enjoy playing through 2 Joy-Cons, just chilling out. And nothing against that. Like, I have no problem with that. I think people will have a great time. For me, it's not what I want from a 2D platform. It's not what I want from a Yoshi game. So yeah, we'll see. I feel like we should pick it out of necessity in March, but unless the reviews are kind of saying that there is some interesting stuff going on here, I don't know that it's worth our time. But we'll see. We'll see. Great. So that was some cool stuff that dropped after the Direct. I also have been playing a indie game that came out last year, I think, at this point.
It was last year.
Yeah, it's Pool Panic, and it was on sale for about £3. So I was like, you know what? I've heard some good things about this. It was featured in some Nintendo Directs. Picked it up on the Switch eShop. Good deal. And I've been playing through it. And it's interesting. It is a very strange game. It very fits into the mold of Adult Swim. Adult Swim have been publishing a lot of strange games. Like we've talked about before with like how Chucklefish have a very distinct aesthetic for the games they choose to publish. And so do Devolver Digital have a very kind of specific type of game. I feel like Adult Swim also have a very specific type of game, and it's the weird kind of out there nonsensical, like similar to the look of a lot of their kind of cartoon stuff almost. Pool Panic does have that distinct vibe to it, and the idea is that you play as a pool ball and you can walk around. Your pool ball has eyes and a face, and it looks very disturbing. It is, again, a very distinctive art style, and it's really cool in motion. Like, I think it is one of those things that you look at, it's like, oh, wow, like, video games haven't been able to do that before, but in this era, we see such a diversity in terms of look, and it is this mix of 2D and 3D, where the pool ball itself is basically like this 2D cartoon, but is rendered as a 3D object, and so that creates some neat effects, and a lot of the levels have that design to it as well. And the idea is that you have to clear balls off of a level, and the levels are not necessarily all pool tables. You start off at a pool table in the tutorial to kind of teach you, but then it goes off in all different directions. There's a huge overworld map. There's a bunch of different places you go to, from like a beach setting to some woods, and like there's a construction site. There's a lot of different places you go to, and the game really leverages itself on the uniqueness of some of its ideas. So one of the levels, you are climbing up a vertical wall where some other pool balls like parasailing down. So you have this rope that you attach to different points in the wall, kind of like you're rock climbing. And as you rock climb up, you basically have to knock pool balls into holes that are embedded into the wall itself. So yes, technically what you're doing is knocking balls into holes, but the way that they flipped it on its head is very, very unique and surprising. And I think that's kind of the best stuff in this game. One of the levels is you're on a motorcycle, and there's a gang of like other pool balls who are on motorcycles beside you. And what you need to do is you need to time it so that your pool ball knocks another pool ball off of their motorcycle and you steal their motorcycle. It's kind of like an Uncharted style, you know, like car chase, but with pool balls in a way, which is kind of funny. And that stuff for me has been the most unique and interesting stuff in the game.
Is there like the plain, here's a pool table, get it in the hole levels as well as all these crazy things?
Yeah, but it's never really a pool table. It's often like you're in a forest, and the forest has like some holes in the ground, and you need to knock pool balls out of trees. There's different types of pool balls. So there's yellow ones which will sometimes jump and avoid you. They're all sentient. They all have faces and they run around. Generally, the ones that stay still are the red balls. They just kind of sit there and they all will take whatever you throw at them. But there are different ones, like there are dancing ones that will like skate around and they'll jump on top of other pool balls. There's a raccoon where in order to get it to come down from the tree, you have to hit the barbecue, and the barbecue drops like burgers onto the ground. So you have to hit the barbecue a couple times and these burgers will fall, and then the raccoon will come out of its nest and start eating the burgers. So you have to be quite quick about it to get the raccoon before it runs back up the tree. So stuff like that, where all the balls have their own personalities, and so they all have maybe different ways that you have to interact with them to finish the level. There's one level where it's like this medieval castle, and there are horse balls. So there are pool balls riding on horses, which are also pool balls, and the what do you call it? The stick. I can't remember what it is when you're javelining. Yes, okay, I get it. Lots of innuendo going on here. What stick is it when you're a knight in shining armor and they're doing the contest where they run at each other with the really long stick? What the hell's that called? It's not a javelin, is it?
No, it's a lance.
Is it a lance? I guess. Like, it's the contest where you like ride at each other with lances. Anyway, the joke is that they're holding pool cues instead. So they're riding on these horses, holding pool cues, and you can jump on the horse and ride around and knock them off their horse and stuff like that as well. It's pretty neat. So that's the kind of variety you see, which is pretty great. Like, I think that is honestly the most interesting stuff, is the variety and the types of things you come across. The problem with the game for me is that it's very difficult and finicky to control. When you aim at a ball, the cue kind of appears, and you can adjust it in two ways. Either you can move your own pool ball to adjust the angle, or you can move the cue to adjust the angle. And it feels like there are certain angles where it just does it. There's such a high sensitivity on the way that you move the cue, and you try to move it so slightly and it like swings wildly. So it becomes very difficult in situations where, like, you know, for example, the horses, when they're riding around, it becomes very difficult to pinpoint the exact angle to nail them while they're in motion, because you have to be quick, and the system for which to shoot at them is not easy to do quickly. It will force you to make mistakes if you try and go fast with it. So that is a bit of a problem with it. And I don't know what it is, but there's this other weird problem where when I'm walking across the overworld, there's this huge overworld map, and I don't know, it kind of seems a bit bloated in a sense, because you have to wander from area to area, and you can only unlock certain places once you've fulfilled a certain amount of challenges, once you've finished however many levels. When I'm walking around that area, the world map like warps. It has this weird warping effect on it. And I don't know if that happens in the regular levels as well, but for some reason I feel quite sick when I play this game, like motion sick, which usually I only get that in first-person games, but other games can do it as well, depending on like the way things look and the way things move, and it's already kind of a weird-looking game. And so some of the motion, it's a very me-specific problem. I don't know if this has affected anyone else, but it just makes me feel a bit motion sick. So it's been very short play sessions that I've been doing it in. And I think, honestly, that's the best way to play it, because there's like 100 levels, and once you finish some levels, you go cash them in. And so there's this big central tower in the middle, and as you finish more levels, it grows and grows and grows until it kind of is supposed to reach its peak. I imagine that's the end of the game when you go up to the top of it. So it is best played in kind of short bursts where you play a few levels and then, you know, do something else, which, you know, that's what I've been trying to do. I've also been trying to finish it, so sometimes I have been playing a bit longer, and maybe that's why I'm feeling a bit worse about it, because it's making me feel a bit sick. But yeah, there's lots of cool ideas in there. I think that one of the things that it does that I'm unsure what really the point is, aside from people for completionism's sake, because it seems like if you finish a level, no matter what, it will count as a point towards the end goal. Like, finish a level and you'll get another thing to add to the tower. Every level has 4 different trophies you can get. One trophy is for time, so how quickly did you finish the level. One is for whether you accidentally knocked yourself in the hole. So if you fall down a hole, you lose that trophy. So you have to not basically snooker yourself or whatever, like put yourself in the hole. You get ranked on if you potted every ball. Sometimes levels will have hidden balls. So usually what you have to do is you have to pot every ball, then pot the black ball, and then jump in the hole yourself once the black is potted. There will sometimes be... Basically, the idea is there's a number of balls you need to pot before you can pot the black, and some levels there will be way more balls on the level than the number you need to pot. So you could pot 4 balls, then pot the black, but still not get that trophy because there are other balls that are hidden around the level. I'm saying balls a lot, I realise. And it's very hard to talk about this game without doing so. So that is one, so you get it for the number of balls that you pot. And then the last one, I'm forgetting, is the number of strokes. So the number of times that you shoot the cue. So you have, like, the level will start and it'll say like 19. So you have 19 shots to finish this level. And I think you can do it so that you don't have to do all of those in one, because when you finish the level, the trophies kind of just appear next to the little area around it. And you know, you can go back, I imagine, like, okay, I want to focus this time on how many shots I take. So I'm not going to worry about the timer. I'm not going to worry about doing it quickly. I'm just going to focus on doing it in as few shots as possible. And I've tended to find that I do care about that to some degree. Like, if I can, then I will. Like, if I'm gonna, like, close to getting the trophy, I'll try and do it. But if not, it's not the big deal, because it doesn't seem like it actually matters. It seems like it's something that is more for completionism than it is for the actual game, which is how I like it. You know, as we talked about earlier with, like, things being locked behind collectibles. If you make your collectibles a thing that you don't have to care about if you don't want to, fine by me. Because on the one hand, it's cool if I get them. On the other hand, if I don't, who cares? You know, it's not a big deal. So it's neat that it does that it has these, like, boundaries for you to work within if you want to. But yeah, I don't know. I think it should inspire me a bit more. There have been levels and there have been things that I've been like, oh, that's really cool. But honestly, those are kind of more few and far between. Majority of the levels are kind of like, okay, you're in a forest and I don't know, there's this weird mechanic where you have these tiny red fruits and you have to collect all the red fruits together, and the red fruits will then form into a ball, and then you have a ball that you can pot. And then you have to, like, knock these 2 fruits together to make a hole, because there's no holes on the level. So some of that kind of weird puzzle solving stuff is in there as well. That's sometimes a little bit obtuse, hard to figure out, a bit point and click adventure-y. But yeah, it's neat. I mean, for £3, you can't really go wrong. I don't think it's on sale anymore. But yeah, I'm glad that I'm checking it out, because it's one of those weird nindies that has been highlighted in the past, and thought I'd give it a go. And if you don't suffer...
And playing games on Switch is... Like, I'm always looking for another game to play on Switch, no matter what.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I thought I'd check it out just because want to get a wide variety of eShop stuff out there and play some stuff. So yeah, it's neat. I'll see if I can finish it off, but if not, I'm not too bothered. There's 100 levels. I've seen a good variety of what it's had to offer, so I might just kind of leave it there. But we shall see. Nice. Anyway. That is going to close it out for the first segment. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back after the break with some of your emails. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. It is the second segment, and that means it's time for your emails. We're running pretty low on emails. I'm not going to lie, we need some more, so please send them in to ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com, or drop a comment in our Discord server. Link in the description to get on there. There's a good discussion always going on there, and you can hit the emails thread and post one in there, and we'll pick those up as well if that's easier for you. But our first email this week is from Eric, who's from Calgary in Alberta, Canada. Hi TNL, I found your podcast after getting back into video games in a big way with the release of the Switch. It was the first console I've bought day and date since the Wii, and have been keeping up with new releases quite regularly. I recently got New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe and was thinking about how the 2D Mario series has stagnated in recent years. When you look at its history, Super Mario Bros. 1, 2, North American version, 3, and World all pushed the series forward in gigantic ways, only to be sidelined by the move to 3D with Mario RPG and 64. Since World, we haven't really had a return to form in the 2D series that's brought anything new or interesting. Yoshi's Island was arguably a backdoor pilot in the entire Yoshi series. Where do you see the 2D Mario series going in the future? Do you think we'll get more of the new series, recycling old ideas with limited inspiration, or will we finally get a major revamp in the vein of Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze? I, for one, would like to see them look to Western developers and recent 2D successes like Celeste and SteamWorld and take the series in a brand new adventure-style direction. As it is, they are currently juggling many different Mario franchises with Odyssey, Rabbids, Paper Mario and Luigi, all leading their respective types very well, leaving titles like 3D Land, 3D World and New all seeming like second-rate productions in comparison. Thanks for putting together a great Nintendo-focused podcast, Eric.
Well, thank you, Eric, for writing in. We do like to hear from people who haven't written in before, so you can send those if you haven't written in. And he asked a very interesting question because I think it's something that we have bemoaned quite a lot over the years. And one of the things that I wrote a while back in like 2012 was for an IGN blog contest, which was about the New Super Mario Bros. Series. And back in that year, we had New Super Mario Bros. 2 and then New Super Mario Bros. U released within 6 months of each other. And I basically wrote a blog post about like how horribly the series was stagnating even then, which was like 6 years ago. God,
almost
seven. Jesus. And I won that blog contest. It was like featured on the front page of IGN and stuff. And Audrey Drake emailed me being like, hey, you can get this free 3DS download code because that was the prize. And I was like, I don't live in America. And because the 3DS eShop was region locked, I couldn't actually get it, so I never got a prize. But anyway, sideline, the point is that for a long time, I think people have bemoaned the lack of innovation, the sterility of the current iteration of 2D Mario. And I will be the first to say that when 2D Mario resurged in the DS era, I was all on board. I actually really liked that art style on DS. And I still think, going back to the original New Super Mario Bros. On DS, it has a charm to it. Yeah, it's a great game, and it also has a charm to it that I don't think was really replicated with that art style in its iterations. I feel like the way it was more kind of pixely and it was 3D, but it was like that early DS type of kind of 2D, 3D style. It worked really well, and it did feel like it had its own identity. I think the problem is that they tried to replicate that success again and again and again by putting it on Wii, and then on 3DS, and then on Wii U. And as a result, because that uniqueness was lost, I think everyone lumps all those games together, but I actually do think the original New Super Mario Bros. Is still a great-looking game in terms of its own like aesthetic, which is interesting because now I get sick of seeing it all the time because it has no personality. It's just horrible. And I think one of the interesting things is, he doesn't mention it here, but in recent times, Mario in 2D has gotten an injection of life with Mario Maker, right? Like, that is the series that has driven it forward in a new direction and doing something completely different while still maintaining a lot of the things that people want from that series.
I agree entirely about Mario Maker, but I guess if you zoom out and look at, say, 20, 30 years almost cycle, Mario Maker in a weird way is almost like life support for 2D Mario in a strange way, where it's like it's a sideways step, and when we know that ultimately surely Mario has to return back to a non-maker format and be it needs to be a standalone 2D Mario game, not associated with Maker, that does something. I was going to say new, but that's a tainted word now in 2D Mario. Different.
Yeah, and for sure.
I think that it's such a shame when you look at Kirby, Yoshi, DK, Wario, all doing all their own crazy 2D platformers in the last 10 years. Some of them better than others, definitely. Obviously, Tropical Freeze right up there. Wario, Shake Dimension, definitely up there as well. Like, that is maybe the best looking 2D platformer out of the bunch, just because of that cartoon art style. Like,
I would kill for a sequel to Shake Dimension in HD.
Yes, like, throw Mario and Wario in a 2D platformer together in that art style. Get a good feel
give
on
us a sequel to Super Mario Land 2, motherfuckers. I want another Game Boy Mario sequel, because goddamn, that's the best 2D Mario game in our opinion.
And there was a thing going around on Twitter just like a week or two ago at the time of recording, and it was like someone had animated like a Mario on lined paper sort of thing, and it was very much a drawn out Mario, and it was like, this is a cool art direction, why don't they do this kind of thing? And it was like a flick book, and that's how Mario animated. It's like just something crazy and bold. And you know, there's games like Celeste that are completely reinventing how 2D platformers work, and I'm not saying Mario necessarily needs to become a what's the name, that new name for those, Splatformer, that's the one I was looking for. I'm not saying Mario has to become a Splatformer,
genre,
right?
Which I refer to as masochistic platformers, but I think Splatformer is just such a more condensed way of saying it.
But when a game like Odyssey can take away the live system, which is something that has just plagued Mario and Donkey Kong, to be fair as well, like when Odyssey can get rid of it, 2D Mario should also get rid of it and just kind of look to reinventing that formula that can be done, as so many other games have proven. And I really pray that the new art style is dead. And you know, in that Mario Maker 2 reveal, was it clear that the new style was dead and that was a 3D world style, or is new there as well?
They did show the new alongside 3D World. So you have new Super Mario Brothers, but you also have Super Mario 3D World in 2D, which is weird, right? Because you're taking this franchise that is a kind of pseudo in the middle thing, like 3D Land, 3D World, are kind of this weird isometric, not 3D, not 2D, kind of running the line idea, and now you're integrating that back into the 2D Mario style, like having the cat power up, inserting some things like the clear pipes that you can go through. Lots of weird things from that game have been thrown into a 2D version, and it makes you think, like, is that the direction they go for the next 2D Mario? Do they just use the 3D Land, 3D World assets and make a new Mario game in that style? Because it's not necessarily something I would want to see, because it feels a bit too close to what New Super Mario Brothers is. Like, it looks a lot better, it's a lot cleaner, I think just generally is a nicer looking style of Mario game, but it's basically taking the kind of crisp, polished 3D Mario of even Odyssey and just slapping it in 2D almost. Like, it doesn't feel unique or different, and what I want from 2D Mario is for it to go for something more distinct and to add new different mechanics, right? The new Super Mario Brothers series added a few things, like it added wall jumping and sliding and things like that, which is not revolutionary. A lot of games have done that before.
Like the hover jump. Right,
the hover, the kind of ability for you to adjust mid-air, it's a thing that the 3D Mario games did, honestly, because in 3 dimensions platforming is a lot harder to be so precise, so you needed a bit of a buffer. So like Galaxy had a little bit of a stopper, Odyssey has it with the hat throw. Like, you have these ways in the 3D series for you to readjust your movement, because it's a lot more difficult to nail jumps than it is in 2D, and so that, and I don't think that little hover exists in the original New Super Mario Brothers.
No, I don't think it does. I think it was new maybe to the Wii U one. I don't know.
Maybe it was Wii. It might have even been the Wii version.
Maybe.
But like, the thing with that series is that it tended to innovate in the direction of multiplayer, and that's the similar thing with 3D World, right? Because 3D World went in the direction of multiplayer. I think the thing that combines my not necessarily hatred but distaste for those games in particular, like New Super Mario Bros. U, New Super Mario Bros. Wii, 3D World, those 3 console Mario games are all united in the fact that they focused first and foremost on multiplayer and less on level design for kind of a single player experience.
It's not even very good multiplayer.
And I know you appreciate 3D World more, but yeah, it definitely, it works, and I would rather play multiplayer in those games than I would in a Donkey Kong, for example, where you need the precision and it needs to be a lot more specific.
They're better than shoehorned in multiplayer like a DK. You're right. But,
yeah,
and when you
and that's the thing, it's hard when that's the direction it was moving in, and for it to get back on track, I think they need to do something that focuses more on tight level design that is for one player.
Yeah, and when you step back and you think Nintendo are like the most innovative developer out there of all time, arguably, surely, and then you realize actually they've still got some really boring, repetitive series like Mario. We've talked about something like Pokemon in the past, and we'll get to that in the next segment perhaps, but also Animal Crossing is very iterative, and it's but all 3 of these games, I guess what they have in common is that they kind of sell the best out of all of them, and
that's the alarming thing, is that if you can sell 30 million copies of a 2D platformer, why wouldn't you greenlight a sequel? Like, you look at the sales of the DS game and the Wii game, and they're just astronomical. Put them together and you're clearing 60 million copies of a game. Like, that is absurd. Like, 2 games and you're selling 60 million pieces of software. It's remarkable. It's actually obscene. And so no wonder that they kept it, because it was recognizable to a wider audience, because people liked playing those games, and because it's Mario, and it's a kind of cheap way to put out sequels that will guarantee you to do well. And I think that we had started to see a bit of a move away from it, because the consoles that it came out on afterwards were not doing so well. When New Super Mario Bros. 2 came out on 3DS wasn't in the greatest of places. Like, it was kind of recovering from a bit of a terrible, start with the price being so high. And then the Wii U happened, and obviously that was a tanking failure. So not many people bought the system, resulting in that series just not doing particularly well. And I don't even think, New Super Mario Bros. Deluxe U came out on Switch at the start of this year. I feel like it sold okay. I don't think it's going to come close to things like Breath of the Wild and Odyssey.
No, and it better not.
Which is interesting, right? Because traditionally, that 2D Mario has always sold better than all the other big franchise names on Nintendo platforms. But at the moment, it seems like the games leading the way are Kart. Obviously, Mario Kart is the big one. Breath of the Wild, Odyssey. Like, the actual games
Smash.
that... Not necessarily, Mario Kart is another one which is iterative and it'll still sell, but I don't know, there's something about Mario Kart that it's kind of like, what can you do to innovate, really? It's a karting game. Like, there's so much more room to improve and so much more innovation possible in the space of 2D platformers than there is in goddamn racing thing. Like, fundamentally, right. Mario Kart has to be Mario Kart. You can't really change that. So yeah, it's a weird place, and it's a place that at the moment feels like we're just still in this limbo. And Mario Maker just feels like this kind of bandage that's on...
Puts that limbo in longer.
It does, yeah. It is, as you said, a sidestep. Like, it is this bandage that's like, okay, like, how about you guys make the fucking Mario game, If you're sick of our Mario game, just make your own goddamn Mario game, That's what Nintendo is saying, is like, you like New Super Mario, you like 3 in World so much, how about you just make your own versions of those? Which, sure...
2019 is obviously Mario Bros. Deluxe and Mario Maker 2. I think 2020, it's fairly unlikely we're going to see 2D Mario. I think 2021, we're kind of starting to get there to, that might be the year of the next step, or maybe 2022. But I do think near the end of the Switch's life cycle, maybe that's the middle of the Switch's life cycle, we don't really know at this stage, but I do feel like it is going to come in the next few years, and we just have to be patient. Like, Mario Maker 2 is going to be great, and that's coming in June. But I do have faith that Nintendo can innovate and completely boost Mario in a way that we're just not expecting for the better. Like there's just so much that it can go, like we've already said.
Yeah. And be weird again, man. Like I like when Mario gets weird. It doesn't, like when I played through World for the first time last year, I was surprised a lot, and there were lots of things that weren't put in Mario Maker, because a lot of my experience before that was through Mario Maker for what was in World, like what enemies there are and what items and stuff. So, and that game has a lot of surprising things. It has like these tiny little thwomps that I'd never seen before and stuff like that. And
there's some cool stuff in there.
It did some neat things that I wasn't expecting, and honestly, like there are no surprises in New Super Mario Brothers as a series. It is just so. It feels like you've just slapped together a thing and been like, it's another one. More so than a lot of other games that they've put out. So yeah, just surprise me. That's all I want from it. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be the most gorgeous game ever, but just do something a little bit unique and make it so that I am surprised when I see it. I don't want to be complacent. I don't want to be in the situation with the 3D World trailer where I was like, oh, it's another Mario game. Give me something more than just another Mario game. That's what Odyssey was. Odyssey was like, holy shit, man, like punch me in the face. This is a Mario game? Like, I want that from T-Rex. Mario, please. Yeah.
But Eric, thanks for your email. Great topic. Our next email is from, this is a name I'm struggling with, Dan Gaskin. From North Wales, who says, hello there, MBZ and Bally, long-time listener, first-time emailer. Thank you. I was wondering on your views on the ultimate version of the latest Smash Brothers offering, and how including everything from all the previous games is going to affect future sequels. Will they ditch the sequel formula for a more iterative experience? On the subject, are there any other gaming franchises that you'd like to see get the ultimate treatment, e.g. Mario Kart, Mario Party? Keep up the top podding, Daniel G. from North Wales.
Fantastic. I think it's interesting because Smash Brothers is unique in this way. Like, it has a series history of stages and fighters. I think as a fighting game, it has that luxury of being like, okay, we can like throw things in this game, but we can keep some out in the other, and just each iteration is as it goes, and you have to think about like, okay, what do we have time to develop for? What is it that we're going to focus on specifically for this game? And I think the Wii U game, a lot of it was like new characters. Like, there's so many new challenges in Smash 4, less so in the new game, but because it focused so much on being like, let's have literally everything that's ever been in the franchise in this game. And to some degree it is. Like, we both talk about how it's ultimate in a lot of ways, but in other ways it isn't quite so much. And hopefully that new update that's coming with the version 3.0 is going to have some things added back in, like give us home run contests, give us break the targets, things like that. But it is crazy, like, because it literally has every character from the series. It has pretty much every stage. I feel like by the end of its life cycle, we might have every stage. Bring back poker floats. That's my campaign that I'm standing on. Give us poker floats again.
We just talked about, like, where does Mario Kart go next? And we've talked in the past about maybe the Smashification Mario Kart, but when you actually step back and think, where the hell does Smash Brothers go next? Like, what are they meant to do from here? Like, sure, you can add more stages, more characters, and that would please a lot of people. And then you're kind of left thinking, I guess that's the answer. It might just be iterative. Like, either you completely change the formula, which I don't know why you would do because it is so successful in its current formula, or you stick to that iteration, because there's always going to be new characters, there's always going to be new games, new stages to base off of those games, and maybe that's just the itch that needs scratched. I can't see where they go next, and not to mention, like, it's Sakurai's baby. We all know how exhausted that poor man is from this damn game that he's been making for years and years and years.
Yep.
He's given us a fantastic version of his baby on Switch, and the Switch might go on for as long as the 3DS. We don't know. Let's just leave it at that. It needs a long. I'm happy for it to have a long break. Smash Brothers. As much as I love Smash Brothers, why not give it a break? We've got the ultimate version.
Well, Bally, we literally just discussed why these series don't have breaks is because they make so much money. Sure. Smash Brothers is on pace to be the best selling Switch game, and it will happen.
But then it has to be iterative, surely.
I mean, Smash Brothers was always iterative. Like, it's a series similar, but I think we forgive Smash Brothers more because we fucking love Smash Brothers.
We do.
And also, as a fighting game, there's only so, like, similar to Mario Kart, there's only so much you can innovate in, right? Like, the bare bones basics of Smash Brothers were invented on the N64. Like, smash people off the stage, percentage meters go up. Like, they've added layers over time. We've got assist trophies, we've got new items. Like, it has grown and enveloped, but it is always stuck to the same formula because it works. And that's why
you could become a 3D fighter.
No. Please no! I fucking hate all those 3D type fighting games.
3D fight. What's a good 3D?
God, there's
fighter?
so many garbage Dragon Ball Z games that are just like that, you know, where they just fly around and just smash, like, terrible Naruto. All the anime games, basically. Just lump all the anime games into that. Even Pokken Fighters, which, like, the pseudo 3D 2D thing that kind of, like, blended it together and a bit of nonsense. But yeah, regardless of where Smash Brothers goes in the future, what franchises, what games should get the ultimate treatment? I think Mario Kart's an obvious one. Like, he brings it up, but, like, hell yeah, because the tradition with Mario Kart is to be like, okay, here are 8 new, not 8 new tracks. I guess it's 4 new Grand Prix usually, and 4 old ones, right? Like 4 classic, 4 new.
Yeah, it's normally 32 new, 32 old, 64 total.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, it's usually 16, right? Because you have 4 cups 16, that are new cups, 4 cups that are old cups. But also they changed that with the new game because the DLC cups, which increased its
and then they just mixed
size.
it all up. Yep. Oh, God. Mario Kart is a great series that's been very relevant in referencing its past, and I've loved that since what was the first game that did that? I think it was the DS version. Like, that was a huge selling point of the DS version. As a huge Mario Kart fan, I absolutely loved that, and I do think that Mario Kart could have an ultimate version, and that would be great. But as much as I would like that, we've talked about the Smashification of that game franchise, and I would love to see that far more, to be honest. And maybe you could do 2 in 1.
Right, obviously I would love to see new tracks and new things using Nintendo's other franchises to leverage that. But the idea of an Ultimate Mario Kart could be what they do for Switch, you know? Like, there's the possibility that they don't want to develop because they already have a successful Mario Kart on Switch. They don't want to develop a whole brand new one for the system because this one's selling great anyway. So why don't they put out the ultimate version where it's like, here's every track from the series history, here's every character. Not that characters really matter in Mario Kart, but, like, what if they throw in things like the doubles mechanic from Double Dash? Like, put stuff like that in there. Have a tick box option to be like, I want to play Double Dash mode, you know? So it has the ability for you to do things like karts and, like, flying, but also you can do Double Dash mode. You can race on retro versions of the track. You can race on new versions of the track. Just make it so that everyone has the options. And also, obviously, every battle mode stage. Like, bring back the classics like Block Fortress and stuff from N64. Give us all the battle mode stages in one place. And obviously I know you're not a fan of battle mode, but let's face it, N64 had the best battle mode. It was my favourite thing to do in Mario Kart when I played at your house. So
yeah, I think, I don't know, games like Fire Emblem Advance Wars you're just getting into kind of collections rather than ultimate versions. I think that
and it takes a certain type of game to create an ultimate version of it, and that's why Smash Brothers works, is because as a fighting game, it has these significant components, and that's why I think Mario Kart works as well, and that's why he suggested Party, because, like, you can take every board from the franchise and bring them all together, throw in a microphone, have microphone minigames and motion control minigames and all of them. I think they kind of already have done this with a couple of games. Like, the significant ones are WarioWare and Rhythm Heaven, where they have basically made ultimate versions of those games in the form of WarioWare Gold and Rhythm Heaven Megamix, which aren't really new games. They do have some new stuff in them, but they are basically re-releases of the series history, putting in stuff like, you know, the motion control and the microphone mini games and touchscreen stuff, just putting it all in one big package and saying, hey, here you go, this is the best of the best. And for people new to it, it's great because they get to experience the majority of the good stuff that has been in that series in the past.
And there was that Mario Party 3DS collection which had, like, other GameCube game.
It was like the 100 best mini games.
Yeah. And that it kind of looked not great, but
because all it was the mini games. It was just the mini games and nothing else. There was no party board to it. It was that's kind of the bad way to do it. Like, don't do that version. That's not the ultimate version. It's like, picking down 100 of these tiny little games and throwing them all in one package. It's there's definitely better ways to tackle this problem. And for me, talking of Pokemon, which we're probably going to talk about in a second, I think everyone over the years has wanted what the ultimate version of Pokemon would be, which is get every region in one place. Like, that's the magic thing about Gen 2, is like, oh shit, I go back to that previous region, and everyone loves that moment. And people for so long have been like, man, that moment was so good, like, do that again in one of these games. And the ultimate Pokemon game in the traditional formula would be like, hey, we're kind of filling out this world map. Like, we've got Hawaii, we've got France, we've got New York. Like, this world is large, and there's lots of continents on it and lots of places you can go. How about we just make a Pokemon game where we don't really introduce that much new, like maybe a couple new, like 20 new Pokemon, let's say, but the big focus is on traversing the entire place, like having every gym leader in the series, having this crazy Elite Four, like having a final mega challenge, you know?
Throw in a stadium mode.
Yeah. Absolutely. That would be something I would not necessarily be interested in playing, because it seems like a gargantuan thing. But it also hews quite closely to what people would want from a Pokemon MMO, which I've never been like a big fan of that idea. I think it's like, you know, it sounds cool in concept, but I don't think it would be actually that interesting. But I think a single-player game that is set in, you know, they basically make a big open-world Pokemon that people want, but instead of focusing their resources on trying to innovate it, just make it everything old and make it new again, right? So, like, just recreate every region and let people wander around it. Which, you know, it's not an innovative idea. Everyone's talked about it, but, you know.
I do think Gen 1 is just going to keep going and going and going, and I still find a nostalgia and something about Gen 1 that I'd like want to jump back into that world. And Let's Go Eevee Pikachu maybe wasn't the right thing for me, but I'm ready to just kind of do Gen 1 stuff. I just love that, like, what we grew up with. It's so cool.
Yeah, definitely. Any other games series you can think of for an ultimate version? I don't know. I was thinking about like other fighting games and like Soul Calibur, like bring back all the guest characters. Like, I want to play Darth Vader versus Link. You know, let's do that. That sounds like a good idea. But obviously, some of those
cost a bit of money, but yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure, licensing, definitely. You can deal with it though; it'll be fine. Yeah,
the sports games, just get all the courses, and they did have that sports game where they put all the sports together, which was at the end of the 3DS life cycle, which is weird, but just sort of like Mario Golf, like brings all the golf courses under one roof, maybe including the RPG mode, you know, something like that. I don't know. There's loads of things they could do.
Definitely. But yeah, thank you for your question, Dan. And yeah, where can people write in for more emails that we're going to be answering on the show, Bally?
Please send your emails to ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. Or comment in our Discord, like I said at the top of the segment. Link to that Discord in the description and through our Twitter account @TNL Podcast. We've got some good chats going on over on the Discord server. It's good fun. It's a good place to be. It's a nice little community we've built up. So yeah, jump in there. It's well worth your time and leave us a comment. But yeah, until the next email segment in the next show, I guess we'll see you in the third segment of this show. We will be right back.
Alright folks, welcome back to the final part of the show for today. And as you probably all know, there's been a lot of rumours, news, things happening in the sphere of Nintendo recently, all kind of in a big kind of burst at the end of February. So, we wanted to talk about it, chat about some of the different things that happened, and kind of give our take on all the stuff. And we'd mentioned it at the start of the show, but I think the big one is that our big man, the head honcho at Nintendo of America, president for however many years?
15 years, I believe.
13 years as president.
13 years.
15 years total at the company.
Right.
Reggie Fils-Aimé has retired from Nintendo. It's kind of shocking, like, that a CEO/COO, whatever he is, leaves a company without any controversy or anything like that. It's just like, no, I'm not going to another company. I'm not like trying to boost my career in another way. I'm just going to retire, and I'm done, and I'm on top, and I'm leaving. Which is cool, because I think that, you know, a lot of the times it happens that they want to go on and do something else, like people like Peter Moore, who I didn't think he was head of EA at any point. He might have been, but he's like went and took over Liverpool Football Club and stuff like that. Reggie could kind of like write his own ticket and go wherever he wanted, honestly, when you're a kind of executive of that level. He would be able to, but he's just saying, no, I want to spend more time with my family, my friends, retire at 57. What a good time to retire, my God. And enjoy the rest of his life, which is very cool. Reggie Fils-Aimé, what an important figure in Nintendo history. And for me, really, I haven't known a Nintendo in terms of industry-wide without Reggie as the face. I remember reading Nintendo Official Magazine in 2004 when the DS had first been revealed. That was like the time at which I first paid attention to E3 and what E3 was. Like, it's the first E3 I have memories of. And I remember seeing pictures of Reggie on the magazine. I remember people talking about him. I don't think it was until a few years later that I actually saw the conference itself when it came online, and kind of watched the very famous opening to it and the way that he commands the stage. But looking at that Reggie from that era, it's so interesting and weird, because he does develop and change over the kind of the course of his tenure at Nintendo. But back then, you know, he really was going for it. He wanted to, and you think about what Nintendo was back in the GameCube days, it was a company that was derided for its kiddie image, that wanted to sell copies of games to hardcore players, but weren't able to because the PS2 and Xbox were being such successes around it. And they bring in someone like Reggie, who is there as this face trying to push, I guess, maturity in the company. And obviously that E3 famously ends with the Twilight Princess trailer, the one that everyone goes crazy for, which was the direction at that time. Like, and it seemed like Reggie was the vanguard who brought on that period of Nintendo where they were trying to be more edgy, they were trying to be more out there, and kind of capture the attention of people who weren't just Nintendo fans at that point in time.
He really was like probably my first memory of like a Nintendo official, maybe even before someone like Miyamoto, to be honest. Like, it was in and around the same time.
I don't know, I feel like I probably knew about Miyamoto before I knew about Reggie, but definitely in terms of following, like, I remember downloading videos around E3 2006 when the Wii was a big thing.
GameSpot and just watching that reveal and all the
E3
hype
access and stuff like that. Like, I remember doing that. That was when the internet was starting to be okay in terms of downloading things and streaming stuff online. And I do recall back then that, you know, I'd remembered Reggie from when I'd read about him in the magazines and stuff like that.
Who was head of NOA before Reggie?
So I believe it was one of the nephews of thingy, what's his face, Yamauchi. So the Yamauchis basically had run Nintendo for the last 100 years or so, until obviously they gave up to Iwata, who became president after Yamauchi. Iwata was like the fourth president of Nintendo after all the people in the Yamauchi family, basically. And so I think it was one of his like nephews or something who they'd put out there. Nintendo, very family business at that point, and really kind of worked that way. And I think there was actually a point in time when Iwata was still president that he kind of changed the title, and so Reggie wasn't actually CEO anymore. He became COO, and the president of NCL assumed the title of CEO of Nintendo of America. So basically, Furukawa right now, I think, probably is also the CEO of Nintendo of America, technically, on a technical level. But, you know, Reggie was COO, and so he really was alongside Iwata, and I think both of them came to prominence around the same time, right? Like Iwata was maybe 2002, a little bit earlier than that, and Reggie was a similar era. So the faces really of Nintendo for the past decade were these two guys, and obviously it was horrifically tragic when Iwata passed away, and now we're kind of not losing Reggie, but he's moving away from the company, and they have new faces now and things like that. But it is really the end of an era. It's really the end of a time when he was really the forward-facing person at Nintendo, and he really is. He's one of those unique people because he is a CEO, but he's also a very charismatic, very presentable person. And he's the type of person who you can trot out at a Game Awards, at an E3.
He can give an interview with Jeff Keighley and say almost nothing, but still be entertaining at the same time.
Right, and he's someone who understands games, but also understands the business behind games and the PR side of it. And obviously, we always get annoyed at him because he always gives the very stock PR answer, and it's like, well, it's Reggie. What else is he going to do? He kind of has to, in a sense. But every now and again, he'd give you a little tidbit. He'd give you a little snippet to show his personality, and that was the thing that people really latched onto. And it's so funny, right? Because there are so many executives in the video game world, like people like Bobby Kotick and people like goddamn slick haired robot dude at EA, Andrew Wilson.
How many of them will take on Hungrybox at Smash Brothers? That's why,
right? And that's the thing, right? It's like there's this outpouring of love for this dude who's a CEO of an enormous corporation. Not CEO, COO, but he's the head of this American division of this corporation, and yet he's a character to people. He's a personality, and you cannot say that about any other video game executive outside of Nintendo, really. And it's really the developers that people latch onto a lot of the time. But people like Andrew Wilson and Peter Moore and stuff like that, people don't love them. People don't really.
I mean, Phil Spencer gets a lot of love, but
yes, he was definitely. I would say Phil is probably one of the other examples of that, but they're rare, right?
Yeah. But he wouldn't risk embarrassing himself playing one of his games in front of an audience. I don't know.
I think Phil Spencer would be down for that. I think Phil Spencer is actually maybe even more open than Reggie. He may not be as kind of a loved personality. I think he's getting there. But the openness and honestness with which Phil Spencer speaks on things like the Giant Bomb Couch at E3 and stuff like that, for me, that's a lot more of a...
But that might not even be to do with the character and more just the power that he has in that company versus Reggie, who...
Maybe, yeah, but that I think that Phil Spencer is just a very honest dude. I wouldn't say he's a character like Reggie was, but he's a very upfront, honest dude, and that's what people like about him. And so, yes, okay, there are a couple examples there, but really, Reggie is unique in that sense, right? And I think that was the thing that was very interesting about him. And he went through so many phases, right? The era when I remember going back and watching some of those old freaking E3 presentations with you, and the way in which he just jabs at the competition. He does actually at some point mention, he mentions Sony by name and jabs at them and takes a dig at the PSP, really goes in on Sony, which I remember talking about this on the show probably a couple of years ago about how Reggie will never mention any other video game company. He won't mention Microsoft or Sony by name. It's almost anathema for him to do so. And yet back then, he was just going for it. He just out for blood. And I think the games industry has shifted somewhat since then, and Nintendo have become very much more isolated and about themselves and far less about talking about the other companies, despite the fact that the next story we're going to talk about with Microsoft suggests the opposite, right? That they're getting in bed with one another. But it was so cool, and I think really for me, the era in which Reggie really shone was during the Wii U times. When Nintendo were down in the dumps and they had to kind of pull things out, they really went weird with Nintendo Directs, with Iwata and Reggie doing some of the most memorable things.
The puppets, the Star Fox Zero puppets.
Yeah, the Star Fox puppets, the Yokai Watch sketch from a Direct, Reggie firing Bill on a Nintendo Direct, so many, the Reginator, him training for the Nintendo World Championship, so many amazing, really leaning...
Robot Chicken.
Yep, leaning into the memes, and obviously those were kind of created and I think Reggie latched onto them a bit too much a lot of the time. My body is ready was a thing that he, I think, trotted out maybe one too many. And it was a very innocuous thing that he kind of said when he stepped onto the Wii Fit balance board for the first time. But yeah, I will really miss having Reggie as a part of the company. And you can tell that he has stepped back from that more forward-facing role in recent years. I was just thinking about this, but like that moment at the Game Awards last year, I'm so glad that we got that now, because we wouldn't have been able to after this, because
maybe it was the reason we were able to get it. Maybe that's the reason Reggie said yes, or he
potentially
informed the others and said, like, look, this is what's happening, this is why we have to do this now. Or
I mean, that's definitely a thing that Keighley got together. Keighley had wanted to do that for a long time, but I'm so happy that it happened, right? Because it's not going to be able to happen again. And as great as Doug Bowser seems to be, and as much as people like that, and the fact that his name is goddamn Bowser, and the fact that that picture that was taken in 2015 when he joined the company of like Mario and Luigi tied up behind him is a very fun thing. He's not going to be Reggie. Like, you're not replacing, just like no one can replace Iwata, no one can really replace Reggie. He's a very unique persona within the world of Nintendo.
And I hope Doug is his own character that we might see more, because I mean, Koizumi's taken over the direct, and
and it does seem that they've made them more international and universal. There's no longer a thing, and I really miss this. Like, there's so many weird things that
who's going to do E3 this year?
Yeah, well, there's so many weird things that I miss about the Wii U era of Nintendo, and their weirdness, and the way that each Nintendo Direct was presented by a different person in different regions. The fact that we could watch the European one and our dude would be Shibata, my main man, Satoru Shibata, dressing up as Phoenix Wright and Professor Layton and doing his own weird stuff, whereas Reggie and Bill...
And there were even some other British guys on the even more local indie specific ones, and
Pokemon, what's his name? Pokemon Ed, because he kept saying Pokemon. It's my favourite dude, Pokemon Ed. Yeah, and I miss that, and really, that's kind of taken away. I feel the Directs have lost something personality-wise. I think as a snappy presentation of like, boom, 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 here are the games, we're fucking nailing it. It fits with the sleekness of the Switch era, fits with the style of marketing Nintendo have gone for. But goddamn, I miss the goofy era of the Wii U, where they had sketches and nonsense, and that's really where some of the best stuff comes from Reggie and Iwata fighting each other, to the E3s with the Robot Chicken, and even stupid action figure man from the first like E3 they did on video. It's a bummer that we don't have that stuff anymore. But as we've kind of said, they've ushered into this new era of Nintendo Directs now. The way they present themselves is very different, and it's changed.
It's a well-oiled machine now, and I think they've found what works best in their vision, and they're just going for it now at the moment, I guess, with the success of the Switch.
Definitely. Any favourite moments of Reggie that you...
It's gotta be the hype around this match he had with Hungrybox, and then he said like how because Smash Brothers was coming to 3DS, he was going to get all this extra time to practice it, and well done, Reggie, for giving it a go, but he was god awful at Smash Brothers.
May be the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen in terms of video
funny
game playing.
And I'm just so glad he did it, and it was just such a fun moment that
and he wasn't afraid to laugh at himself, and like, you know, he really reveled in it, and that was the amazing thing, and he did a really great video, like the send-off video where he was like thanking the Nintendo community and everything, and I even like remember like the Animal Crossing Direct when he was talking about his house and like how he would change his house in Animal Crossing on 3DS. So many Reggie moments that are great. My favourite Reggie moment is one that we watched. It's like a very little one, but it's really hilarious. We watched the E3 press conference from I think 2005 or something. It was during Electroplankton, when they were doing the Electroplankton DJ, and I think we said it during the video when we were talking over it, but it cuts to Reggie, and he's doing this like disco dance with his hand just in the air, just like spinning his finger in the air, doing this little disco dance, and I'm like, someone please gif that for me, and then someone did gif it. It's one of my favourite Reggie gifs. He's such a gifable person, really just a great character. So thank you, Reggie, for all your years at Nintendo. Enjoy retirement, and it probably has millions he's sitting on that he can just chill out now.
He can play Animal Crossing every day, and he can actually work on those Smash Brothers skills.
He can, yeah. Hey, Reggie, he can practice some Smash Brothers now.
Bring him back to E3 in 10 years' time, take on Hungrybox.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be great?
Oh, man. Oh, well. All right, well, that is Reggie. Big thing. The next thing we want to chat about is some rumors that have been floating about recently about Xbox and Nintendo, about Microsoft and Nintendo doing some stuff together. This came from Direct Feed Games, which is a very small YouTube channel that people are like, who is this? What do they know? The dude who runs that channel is a guy by the name of Nate Drake on Reset Era. He used to be on NeoGAF as well. He is a known insider. He has information. He has been proven right quite a few times in the past. So he is someone
and
you
wrong,
can trust.
apparently.
Well, yes, just different degrees, right?
Yeah.
Like there were certain things that he was close to, but not exactly on, and things like that. But he is basically saying that Xbox Game Pass is coming to Switch this year, and Xbox are also going to be publishing, or Microsoft are going to be publishing some of their other games natively on Switch. And games that have been name dropped are Ori and the Blind Forest and Cuphead so far.
The two games I want, and
which are the two best Microsoft published games of this generation, if we're being frank. Like they've got all their big name hitters like Halo and Gears. Neither of those come close to the quality of Ori and the Blind Forest and Cuphead, in my frank opinion. And I'm very glad that I've been able to play those two games despite not owning an Xbox, because guess what? Microsoft puts all their games out on PC as well, which is very, very cool. So this is a pretty big deal. Like this is like industry breaking in a sense. If you had told me about this 5 years ago, I would have lost my goddamn mind. In 2019, it's somewhat feasible in a weird way. And it's only feasible because of the history of Microsoft over the past kind of console generation, the deals that have already been done with Nintendo, the kind of weird pseudo like stand they both have against Sony almost, or like showing Sony up with things like crossplay in Minecraft and in Rocket League and all these other games where Sony, has this policy of arrogance and silence, not wanting to come to it until they finally did with Fortnite last year. It seems like Microsoft and Nintendo are kind of buddy-buddy in a lot of ways.
Let me just confirm a couple of things. So, okay. If I own an Xbox One at the moment and I am subscribed to Game Pass, the games that I'm playing on that, am I playing them locally, or am I, like natively I should say, or am I streaming them?
You're playing them natively. So
I'm playing them natively.
Game Pass works that you subscribe to it, you pay $10 a month, and you download the games. So you download the games to your Xbox. You have the actual game on your Xbox. It is not being streamed. It is the actual digital version of the game.
And is that the same? Would that be the same thing for Switch?
No. So that is my understanding, is that for this to work, it would have to be a streaming model, because there is no way in God's hell that Gears of War 5 or Halo Infinite or Forza 4...
Or did they just launch it without those games, maybe?
No, because Microsoft now have a policy that day one, every Microsoft first-party published game is on Game Pass. If you're subscribed to Game Pass, you don't have to buy Gears of War 5. You don't have to buy Halo Infinite. You'll just have it by being subscribed to Game Pass. That's how ridiculous Game Pass is. Every first-party...
It is insane. It's such a good deal.
So like even if you wanted to try Sea of Thieves, you could have paid $10, played it for a month, and then dropped it, and you got to play Sea of Thieves for $10. But the thing is, Microsoft want you to stay subscribed. Obviously, that's their thing. Is like you may not buy every first-party Microsoft game in a year, but if you pay them $120, that's probably worth a lot more to them, and they can sell you other things and services and stuff.
They've done the maths,
right? And so that's what, and increasingly, Microsoft is moving away from the hardware and becoming, and they've always been more of a software company anyway, but that is where their bread and butter is, and it's in services as well. And everyone's trying to get in on services. Everyone's trying to be part of the streaming game. There's this big thing that's happening with Google this month. Apparently, Google are set to launch some big streaming initiative. They did that stuff with Assassin's Creed that some people got to do, which was apparently quite good. It's a big time right now for services and the future of streaming. And obviously, internet infrastructure has to get to a place where it's all feasible. But at this point, Microsoft doesn't really care if you buy an Xbox. They don't care if you have a PC. They just want you to buy their products and be engaged in their ecosystem. And if that means you do it on Nintendo system, I'm not sure they really care, which is mind-boggling, because the very idea that two of the big three companies would make something like this happen it's crazy. It's ridiculous. And you have to think about, like, what is the benefit for Nintendo here? What is the benefit for Microsoft? How does it net out? And on Nintendo's end, you've got to think about the idea of third-party games, right? Like, what if there is a third-party game that comes to both Switch and Microsoft? Doom Eternal, let's say. Doom Eternal is coming out this year, and that's going to be on Microsoft's platform. It will also be on Switch. What's to stop you getting Game Pass and streaming a version of Doom Eternal? Obviously, that's not going to happen because I imagine Doom Eternal, day one, it's not going to be on Game Pass. It's not a first-party Microsoft game. Probably in a couple of years' time, they'll throw it on the service because Game Pass usually has, like, older games on the service. So it may not clash in that way, but you've got to think about it because it is a concern.
The Wi-Fi functionality on the Switch, just how on earth will it cope with streaming Xbox games? I mean, obviously there's Assassin's Creed running in Japan as we speak. So, I don't know. Is it doable?
And that is Ubisoft doing that, and obviously Capcom have done it with Resident Evil 7. And I don't know what those companies have in terms of their infrastructure, but if Microsoft's tech is good, if it works, then it's something that, why not put it on the Switch? And I don't know. I don't know what kind of deals will have been done with Nintendo, what this means for whether Nintendo are getting a cut of Game Pass subscriptions that are on Switch, which would be ridiculous, or something along those lines. But I'm trying to think of, like, what is the deal that has been made here? What is the backroom?
Banjo and Smash.
Well, yeah, but, like, who does that benefit? That benefits Microsoft. Like, that's getting exposure for their character on a Nintendo platform. Like, all the ways that I look at this.
Yeah, but Nintendo will still sell more downloads of that DLC.
Yeah, well, yeah, potentially, sure. Obviously, that'll help Nintendo, but, like, I'm trying to think of a more tangible benefit for Nintendo, because for me, a lot of this looks like Microsoft doing really well because they get their games to more people on a larger install base, just building their platform as much as possible.
I don't think currently it's financially in many people's interests to own an Xbox as well as a PS4, and I think that
obviously
there will definitely be plenty of people who own PC and Switch, or PS4 and Switch, or Xbox and Switch. I mean, that'd be a bit frustrating if you're on Xbox and Switch and then this comes to Switch, but I think that there is a unique selling point for Nintendo.
You're talking about there's a gap in the market in terms of most people will have a PS4 and a Switch. If they get Game Pass on Switch, it gives them an excuse to spend money on a Microsoft product, basically.
Right. But there will be people who will pick up a Switch because they know that there's now a wealth of Microsoft games that they can get into if they don't own a Xbox or PC otherwise.
Right, and obviously you're paying a $10 monthly thing. We don't know how good the streaming service is going to be, whether it will work at all, if it's going to be any good. But then you also think about the idea of some of these games will be able to be run natively. Like, some Game Pass games you could feasibly download to Switch, things like Cuphead and Ori and the Blind Forest. I imagine what Microsoft will do is that they will put those up just on the eShop and charge full price for them, and get full whack. And obviously Nintendo will take a cut of those sales on the eShop. Obviously Nintendo already has Microsoft games on their platform with Minecraft, and they take a cut of every copy of Minecraft that is sold on the Switch because of licensing fees and stuff like that, because they're the platform holder. So that's a way that Nintendo obviously can make money back, and those are really critically acclaimed games like Cuphead and Ori and the Blind Forest, two of the best games made in the last generation, highly critically acclaimed. Both have sold very well, but a Switch audience likely hasn't played them because they're on platforms that, generally this type of player won't own. Like, majority, as we've said, are going to be PS4 and Switch. They're not going to own Xbox. They're not going to own a PC, or at least a PC that could run or play those games properly. And they are very Nintendo games. I mean, Cuphead is basically fucking Contra. Ori and the Blind Forest is a Metroid game. Like, those are bread and butter classic Nintendo style games that would do exceptionally well on the platform. And you've got to be thinking that is part of their reason behind it as well. It's like, it just fits the audience and it fits the market so perfectly, in those cases at the very least.
When's it coming?
I don't know. People say this year. People say sometime this year. It would be an insane E3 drop. Imagine, like, Sony not even at E3 and Nintendo and Microsoft do this massive drop. That would be absurd.
It's the year to do that, I guess. If
absolutely, because they have the spotlight. Man. Sony are not saying anything, so...
Man.
It's definitely a possibility. Like, does Koizumi walk out at the Xbox press conference. You know, we've talked about it before. Miyamoto showed up at Ubisoft. Obviously, that's a different thing.
I mean, I don't know. How else would you announce it? It seems like the logical way of announcing something like this, surely.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big deal, so you want a big stage for it. You know, Microsoft, they've been so weird over the past few years, and like they have done so much positive in terms of services and value for players and stuff like that. They are really positioned so well for the next generation, and this would be another kind of quiver in their bow
in their quiver.
Bow in their quiver. No, you don't put a bow in a quiver. Arrow in their quiver. There we go. Really, we're great at metaphors on this show. Just kill them. Absolutely. So going forward, I think that this partnership is a strong thing. And whether this is true or not, I mean, you know, I'm inclined to believe it. I think that the signs have been there. I don't think it will be necessarily on a crazy scale. It may be a slow rollout. It may be, hey, the first thing we're doing, we're putting Ori on Switch. That's it. That's the announcement. Ori and the Blind Forest is coming to Switch. Cool partnership. And then it may develop from there. I don't know. It may be that they want to drop it all at once. But I would imagine things go a bit slower than that. Just it's kind of the way that big companies work in that sense. So I imagine that might be the case. But exciting stuff nonetheless.
Very
like
exciting.
What a wild time to be living in video games when these are headlines that are not only feasible but kind of realistic.
Kind of expected.
Yeah, almost kind of in a way expected.
But if you're Microsoft and you want get your Game Pass to go onto other things that aren't just, you know, Xbox and PC, where are you going to go? Why would you start with something like an iPad?
You're going to go onto phones and tablets phones. And everything.
I mean, obviously that install base is far bigger, but
huge, yeah.
But you know, then how are you going to implement all these games that use joysticks and
right?
Like, so the Switch just feels like the safe bet. I mean, you're not going to go on Sony at this stage. You don't want to just not give in, but necessarily you don't want to deal with the enemy necessarily that closely at first, so why not go with your half enemy?
I mean, honestly, at some point I wouldn't be surprised if Microsoft are like, yeah, fuck it, put on PS5, who cares, you know? But that's, I think, probably later down the line.
I feel like it's later down the line, and I think that will depend hugely on the next gen console
like
launch.
What even is next gen? What does it look like?
Gen?
You know, no one knows at this point.
The Microsoft computer.
Wow. I'll buy one of those. God. Okay, so yeah, that is kind of major, very exciting. Hopefully we'll see some developments on that soon. The final bit of news that happened pretty recently was Pokemon had a direct. The Pokemon company dropped a 7-minute video where they talked about the brand new Pokemon games that have just been announced, Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield. What will they think of next, Bally? It really is. At this point, it's like fucking. We ran out of colors and metals.
Pokemon Ball
now
and
we're,
Bat.
you know, like Sun and Moon to some degree. I understood. Like, okay, elemental forces still kind of figuring out like Cosmos. Like that kind of makes a bit of sense. No, fuck it. We're just doing Sword and Shield now. And it kind of does make sense, right? Because I think that this game is going to have a royal edge to it, a aristocratic kind of
a British
monarchistic, medieval British tint, because it is set in a region that is pretty clearly based on the United Kingdom and the areas within it. It is basically like a straight line. As far as a landmass goes, it's like up and down, like it is the UK, and yeah, Sword and Shield. So I imagine there's going to be lots of Pokemon that are themed around this. I'm waiting for the teacup Pokemon to rear its ugly head and everyone to go fucking crazy about it. It is going to happen, I think. And they showed the game, and it's a Pokemon game. I mean,
I think the art style was a tiny bit more impressive than I was expecting, actually. I think
I think actually from an art design standpoint, it's a really good looking game. Like I think they have a great style. Like some of the areas, like the little cottage that you start in is so evocative of that kind of country.
Like the mountains, the plains,
it really, and it kind of, there's a lake next to the little village, and then you can see the rolling plains of farmland that look look exactly like any piece of rural land in the UK, like the square plots of land that are all kind of different varying shades of brown and green. It felt like the Lake District almost, like it felt like one of those places, and I think they have done a great job of representing the feel of the UK. It's so far from what we've seen in terms of the visual aesthetic of the game. But aside from that, it kind of just looks like Sun and Moon on drugs. It just is like HD version of Sun and Moon. It looks different from Let's Go. I think it looks better than Let's Go in a lot of ways. And it's still kind of that same camera specific angles. Like you're not moving the analog stick, the second analog stick, as Kyle Bossman has said. He wants a Pokemon game where you move the right analog stick, and that's still not the case, I believe, in this iteration, which is a shame because so many people want that. But we've got to be realistic, and we've talked about this in the past ad nauseum. Game Freak are a small studio. They have never once proved that they can make a game beyond the scope of a handheld title in the Pokemon series. And other games they have made have been far smaller. 2D games a lot of the time, and things that don't require that much development budget or effort. And people are like, well, why don't they put the development budget behind it? Why don't they have Monolith Soft or the Zelda team come in and help them and give Game Freak a bit of a helping hand to create something grand and majestic? And the reason is because, quite frankly, Pokemon sells as much as it does anyway. So what's the point in increasing the budget? What's the point in dumping more money into this thing that you're going to make so much money on anyway when you don't have to? When you don't have to increase the amount that you spend on it, and yet you'll still make probably the same amount anyway. I imagined that Pokemon would go even huger. That's a really bad use of
even
the word.
Huger.
That's not a... Huger is not a word. If they were to Breath of the Wild eyes it, I think that it would, like Breath of the Wild, hit a far bigger audience than, say, the Zelda series had in the past. Pokemon already hit pretty much everyone. Like, Pokemon Go is a worldwide phenomenon. You can't find a person on planet Earth most of the time who doesn't know what Pokemon is. Like, it is literally the most profitable media property in history. It is more profitable than fucking Star Wars. Pokemon is insane. So... yes, they could throw ridiculous budget at it, but they make so much money just doing the same thing and incrementally making it better that why would they? What's the point? Because their development budget being smaller means they make more money out of it. It's crazy.
Yeah. I like the Britishness, the step up in art style, as small as it is. I'm definitely up for this game, regardless of whether I ever get around to playing Pokemon Sun this year or not. I'm keen to pick this up in probably November, December when it comes out. And
I mean, I feel like I should check it out.
And we should, as Brits who have enjoyed a Pokemon in the past.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I was not going to pick this up, but then it's set in the UK, and I'm like, for fuck's sake. Like, I don't want to play Forza Horizon 4, but also I can drive around the streets of Edinburgh, so I might buy that game one day. Like, it's a very dumb thing, but, like, for us, when you grow up around media that is so Americentric, and all the locations that people go to are like, oh, Watch Dogs is set in, the West Coast, and then it's set in Chicago. It's set in all these places that we have no context for, we've never been to. Like, it's not, like... But for people who live in those places, it's awesome. Like, you get to see a digital representation of the place you live.
Hey, Dad, you should watch Infinity War. Like, I'm not so sure. It's like, I got seen in Edinburgh. Okay, let's give it a go.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that was one of my favourite things about Avengers Infinity War is, like, they fucking crash into Waverley Station. That's amazing. Like, Edinburgh is in a movie, a massive blockbuster movie, and it looks amazing. It's very, very superficial, but when you haven't had that before... it makes a difference, it really does.
Yeah, it's cool. So, I think it'll be a nice game to look forward to at the end of the year.
Definitely, and it's going to sell crazy. This game's going to do so well. The first real Pokemon game on Switch, they've buttered people up with Let's Go. They've probably added a few new fans to the franchise as a result of that. And now everyone is all in for this game. But we've got to talk about the starters, because we've got 3 new starters. That was the other big reveal. We've got Sobble, who's the little water nymph thing. Score Bunny, who's the rabbit, fire rabbit. And then we have Grookey, who's the grass monkey. Which one is your pick, Bally? Who are you going for?
It's Grookey. It's the grass monkey.
Grookey.
It looks all right. I normally go with grass. I have dabbled in fire. I never go water. That's your pick. But I'm
exactly.
Gonna stick to grass this time.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way it's always been, is you always chose grass, except for when Ali T chose grass, and then you had to choose fire. I think it was in Diamond and Pearl, he chose Turtwig, and you had to choose whoever it was in 4th gen.
Oh,
I'm trying to think.
Memory.
Oh, it's so hard. There's so many generations now, Ali. It's so difficult. Who was it?
Infernape.
Yes, obviously, it was Chimchar, so for Infernape. Yeah. And obviously, Infernape ended up being the best competitive. Infernape's like fucking probably one of the best starters ever made in terms of competitive. And then I was lumped with fucking Empoleon Piplup, who was garbage. Empoleon fucking sucks in competitive. I did use him a bit in like Yu-Gi-Oh!
Now you can have a sad tadpole this time.
I can, yeah. Everyone loves Sobble. He's a depressed fucking tadpole, and Twitter loves him because he attacks with his tears. He's called Sobble. He's a water Pokemon. Of course, Hydro. There's an amazing little drawing on Twitter of him using Hydro Pump, and it's just him fucking breaking down in tears and sobbing. It's very, very good. So yes, if I do pick up the game, then I will, of course. I'm bound by law since 1999 when I picked up Pokemon Blue and chose Squirtle. I have never not chosen the water starter, at least in my main game, because like I played Gold and Silver, so in Silver I chose Chikorita as my second file. I probably have done that a couple of times with secondary games, but when it's the main one, my main story, always water, will never change forever. So yeah, any other thoughts on Sword and Shield, what we can expect from it? Any hopes for changes, things that you're excited about in it, aside from exploring the new region? I don't
know why I'm asking this for this, but like, I just want the story to not be like the most dull thing I've ever seen. I just want it to be these games take minimum 20 hours to beat. Like, I want it to be sustained. I don't just want to have an impact of, this is a cool world to be in, and then 15 hours in thinking, just get me to the end of this thing. Like, yeah. I want it to I want some surprises in there.
Yeah, that would be nice.
They're not going to happen. But
no.
You asked what I wanted, not what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So there we go.
True. Yeah, no, Garbage Tier Story is it's a Pokemon staple. We've got to stick with it. It's they aren't storytellers, Game Freak. God bless them. They make fantastic games, but they're not. They can't write. So localization, they do a good job. I think they do some charming stuff with it, but it's not narrative wise. It's not really a very engaging thing. That's pretty much it. It's a lot of news. Lots of things happened. It was big February for Nintendo. Obviously, they kicked things off by fucking cancelling Metro Prime 4 and rebooting it, and then went on. Was that even in January? I don't know what time is anymore, but the start of the year has been pretty jam-packed in terms of Nintendo news and stuff happening, despite the fact that their games lineup for Switch is pretty barren across the board. But hey, as we've said, it gives us time to catch up on things, put 10 hours into Apex Legends instead, do stuff like that, which is a good time. So yeah, that's pretty much going to close out the show. So thanks everyone for listening. Next episode, we are going to be doing our Backlog Club, which we have been chatting about for a little while now. It is Luigi's Mansion. We are playing through the 3DS version. I have started maybe an hour or so in, really enjoying it so far. I've got a lot of thoughts on it, and eager to share those next time. But you can write into the show to give us your thoughts on Luigi's Mansion, whether you played it back in the day on GameCube, whether you're replaying it now with us on GameCube or on 3DS. Send us your thoughts to our email address, which Bally will tell you now.
ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. And please also, if you find it easier, post comments in our Discord server if you're over on there. Hit the link in the description to get there, or link in our Twitter account @TNL Podcast. And we've got a little thread in there just for chatting about Backlog Club number 6, which of course is Luigi's Mansion. And so that episode is going to come out March the 18th. That's episode 139. Assuming there's no big news that we need to cover that next episode, it will come out next episode.
Yeah, and it's a very, very short game, so you should be able to get through it without much trouble. I've been enjoying it, and yeah, we're going to chat about Luigi's Mansion, so get ready for that. We also obviously would like to talk about our Patreon, which has been going quite well, and we have been putting out episodes of our bonus shows and stuff like that, and you can check that out at patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife. We'd like to thank some of our backers, Bally.
Yes, thank you to my girlfriend Caroline and Atari Alex. They are both our $10 tier level of support. We appreciate that. And of course, our sponsorship level supporter, Daniel V, thank you for your support, and thank you to all our other patrons for all your support. We will have an episode coming out next week, and that will be an episode of TNL Takes, so you won't want to miss that.
Absolutely. Yes, you can go check all that stuff out. You can find us all over the internet. I am on Twitter at LordNBZ. Where can people find you, Bally?
I'm at Ballyman91, BALLYMAN 91.
Great. And as we mentioned before, you can find the podcast Twitter, which is at TNL Podcast. Has links to our YouTube channel, our Discord, various other things, and our email is there as well. I think you can find that. So, if you forget it. And yeah, you can find us in various places on the internet. We are all over Stitcher and podcasting apps, and iTunes is the main one. We have people reviewing us, hopefully, some more on iTunes. That'd be good if we got some more of those.
How do we get on Google Podcasts?
I don't know. I think that they're not available in our country still or something. I was looking into it a while back, and I don't know if they're available. But I want to get on Spotify, man. I want to get on Spotify.
I
don't know how that's even possible, but we can try and do that.
If you know how to get us on Spotify, send us an email.
Let us know. We want to get on Spotify.
Mention in the Discord server or send us a tweet. We would love to know if you have insight how on earth to do that.
Yeah, that would be good. And yeah, so you can find us various places, rate and view us. That would be very, very helpful. It's the most helpful thing you can do to help grow the show. Alrighty, I think that's pretty much going to wrap us up. Anything I've missed, Bally, before we leave?
I don't know. I've got more Apex to get back to, so can we wrap this up?
Yeah, exactly. We better shut up now and just start fucking murdering people again. So yes, happy anniversary to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. 2 years.
Yeah.
And what a fucking video game. Still, 2 years on, I look fondly back on that experience and think,
I do.
What a fucking amazing game that still stands the test of time, and I think will continue to. Just an achievement. And we've got a new Zelda coming this year. It's not a brand new Zelda, but any year with a Zelda's a good year in my book. So roll on, and hopefully we'll have some news on whatever comes next for the big series quite soon. So in any case, thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you in a couple of weeks' time. Bye bye. The musical interludes used on today's show were Dancing Crane from Wargroove, copyright Chucklefish 2019, and the main theme from Yoshi's Crafted World, copyright Nintendo 2019.